But yeah, I got a push it very good.
Thank you. Yeah, we'll take a picture.
So now when we get home, we charge this one.
Probably.
In their case, because it was so young, it was probably going to wait.
Probably. You probably didn't wait much.
la force maintenant.
This is happening. The airborne operation arising. 3 of the 831 planes, bringing the 13,500 paratroopers to this area, while 3 of these planes were flying immediately above our heads here. Flying from the west side of the town square, heading east at an altitude of only about 400 feet. Now the paratroopers within these aeroplanes should have been dispatched to a drop zone about 1.5 miles away from the town. As this is going on, another paratrooper came to Earth. A paratrooper played by the actor Red Buttons in the film The Longest Day. This man's name was John Steele. As John Steele came to Earth, he too couldn't control his descent. He was dropping from far too low an altitude. He found himself drifting towards the church steeple, and his parachute actually snagged on the church. He was left hanging about 60 or 70 feet above ground level, unable to cut himself free because the drop down was just too great. He weighed up his options and he realised he didn't really have an option. He had to hang up there, motionless. He played dead to not draw attention to himself from the Germans on ground level. He spent 2 hours stuck on the church steeple, witnessing all of the carnage down below him, until 2 Germans who were located in the church steeple itself dragged him in. They realised he was still alive, they dragged him in and took him prisoner. He spent about half an hour in captivity before the Germans who had taken him prisoner were taken prisoner themselves. This freed John Steele, but he'd been shot in the foot as he descended to Earth, and this was his ticket home. This was the end of his war. The film The Longest Day tells us a lot of the story of John Steele, but it certainly doesn't tell us the full story. For a start, the film The Longest Day tells us that John Steele landed on the
Good. In Hollywood. In Hollywood. In Hollywood. In Hollywood. In Hollywood. You know you're good. You know you're good. In Hollywood. In Hollywood. You know you shoot. Oh yeah.
And to the left, the clock face as you now look at it. Now the film The Longest Day tells us a little bit about John Steele, but it certainly doesn't tell us that this is a parachute in the church sleeve. Another man got slipped in the church, his name was Ken Russell. This is Ken. Now Ken Russell, his parachute snagged just below John Steele's. He was rifle and John Ray was shot in the stomach. This was a fatal wound. John Ray only had moments. John Steele could be found. Let's say accepting liquid gifts from the grateful locals here. Now he came back, as I say, he became a local celebrity, and that's why his story was used in the film The Longest Day. That's why we know it today. Now I'm not saying this guy doesn't deserve the recognition he got, not for one moment.
Pretty window.
Now, it was obviously here 63 years and a day ago, so if you have a look as we walk around the stone column itself, have a look at it, because there's a few chips now at the stone. These chips are examples of battle damage. It's bullet holes, an example of what happened, you know, the consequences of what happened here in the early morning of June the 6th, 1940. Chipped away then. That happened on the morning of June the 6th. So there's examples of battle damage. moment. Let me show you some more. Just over the road. When the first paratroopers arrived here, he opened up the right-hand side of the two attic windows, as you can see now, and he basically acted as a sniper, taking photographs of paratroopers making their way along the town square. Now what you can see on the red brick of the chimney stack, and what you can see just below the right-hand side of the two attic windows, are those are bullet holes. It's the paratroopers returning fire. Some of the first shots to be fired in the liberation of mainland Europe. That's what we can see over the road there. We cross the road here, just look down, quite a narrow here on D-Day. A guy called Howard Manolian from New Hampshire. Now, Howard actually landed in St. Mary Glees on D-Day in the civilian cemetery here. Now, I'm not going to tell you what Howard told me when he realised he'd landed in this cemetery.
Cool.
Right, now, throughout the morning, we're going to be travelling down some very narrow country lanes. You might have noticed already. Now, the country lanes that we're taking this morning, the majority of them have existed here in Normandy for up to 2,000 years. Now, 2,000 years ago, this area was farmed by Celtic farmers, and they first commenced this network of lanes. They actually dug a lane out. They dug earth out to form a roadway, and with the earth that they dug, they formed earthen embankments on either side of the road. Now, on top of the earthen embankments, they planted trees at regular intervals, and in between these trees, they planted some very tall and very thick hedgerows. Now, this was done for a reason. A very clever system, you could say way ahead of its time in many ways, because the farmers knew, even 2,000 years ago, that as these hedgerows grew, the only thing that we're missing at the moment, what it was like here at 6:30 in the morning of D-Day, is the driving rain. So,
been about the same?
in the morning, I would presume so, yeah. D-Day should have been June the 5th, but it had to be postponed for 24 hours because of storms. In the late morning, early afternoon of D-Day, the sun made a rare appearance. Imagine these guys being soaking wet through landing here in the early morning of D-Day. They might have had the opportunity to dry off a little in the afternoon sunshine. In the evening of D-Day, so yeah, we'll have to put up with it today, but if nothing else, we're tied. We're coming towards high tide at the moment. Although I do have a couple of helping hands. If you look out to sea here, can you see some wooden poles sticking out of the channel there? Now the furthest wooden pole is the low tide mark. So we've got nearly 400 yards of sand exposed here at low tide. The first troops came ashore with about 350 yards of sand exposed in front of them. So the beach landings took place, the first troops arrived here at 6:30 in the morning on a low to rising tide. Now, the Utah Beach landings are undoubtedly the success story of D-Day. It's nothing short of a miracle to be able to say that on D-Day, 23,000 men came ashore on this beach. Out of this number, only 200 were injured. And all of the machine guns, all of the anti-tank guns, all of the mortars have been destroyed, overlooking Uncle Red's sector of Utah Beach, which meant when the first troops landed here, this beach was being defended by 40 German soldiers with rifles. There's 23,000 men approaching this beach, and this sector is being defended by 40 German troops. I like those ones. Added to this, the Germans who were located here, 80% of them were not even German. They had an average age of 36, and many of these troops had been taken to prison camps in Eastern Europe. The German troops, the German army was so strained that they were having to take troops out of prison camps. On top of these cliffs, a gun battery. A gun battery which contains 6 huge guns, which could potentially fire for 14 miles. They had a range of 14 miles. At the moment, we're only 8 miles away, as the cannonball flies, so to speak. We're only 8 miles away from Utah Beach. We can't quite make out the coastline of the peninsula, but it's in a northwesterly direction, 8 miles away from here. The start of Omaha Beach is only 4 miles to the east of here, so the guns located here at Point the Hawk could potentially fire on both Utah Beach, on Omaha Beach, and on approximately 1,500 ships of the Allied naval fleet in the early morning of June 6, 1944. 775 Rangers here. Now, we couldn't get this number of men climbing up those cliffs at the same time. There would be too much congestion, too much opportunity for the Germans located here to wipe out the force as they climbed up the cliffs. So we had to stagger the arrival of these men. What had to happen was well, if all went according to plan at least, the first group of Rangers would arrive here at 6:30 in the morning of D-Day. Now their arrival, the first group's arrival here, would be preceded by a huge naval bombardment to keep the Germans underground, in their bunkers, so they wouldn't see the Rangers. We've got the US Air Force flying over Pointe du Hoc. They've dropped their bombs, and you can see the smoke and the dust rising up from the position. Up on top of these viewing platforms as well, because that's where you're going to get the best photographs from.
Obviously, yeah.
I'll see you in a few minutes.
Get in that bunker. I'm filming you. Get in the bunker. Be a ranger, not a mouse. Get in the bunker. He's in the bunker. We're in a bunker. A German barracks bunker at Pointe du Hoc.
Il y avait de l'eau là. Monsieur, j'ai oublié de vous dire.
Le matin du 6 à 7h du matin, donc vraiment au tout début du combat. Et à côté d'eux est assis également M. Hollard, qui lui habitait Birville le matin du 6 juin 1944. Il était enfant et après que les vétérans aient parlé, il vous parlera aussi de lui ce qu'il a vécu. Madame assure la traduction. Donc, quand M. Earl aura terminé de parler, je vous passerai le micro et ceux d'entre vous qui voudront poser une question pourront le faire. Elle sera traduite et la réponse sera traduite également. Okay.
Bonjour.
Bonjour.
I am Arden Earl. I was with the 116th Regiment of the 29th Division in 1944. On the 6th day of June at 7 o'clock in the morning, we came from the sea and landed at Les Moulins.
Donc, bonjour à tous, il s'appelle Arden Earl. Il appartenait à la 116e division de 116e régiment de la 29e division d'infanterie. Il a débarqué à Omaha Beach par la mer, donc à 7h du matin à Les Moulins, environ 1,5 km d'ici.
The beach looked very different than what we had trained for. There were many more defenses than what we thought, and the enemy was there, and they were shooting at me.
Quand ils ont atteint la plage, et la plage était complètement différente de celle sur laquelle ils s'étaient entraînés pour combattre. En particulier, il y avait des barbelés, des mines, et l'ennemi était en train de leur tirer dessus.
Time, at first, we couldn't think what to do, and then we decided we would move to Verville and come up to here, and time just kind of stood still. It took us 2 hours to come over to Verville.
Ils ne savaient pas trop quoi faire et ils ont décidé de revenir par ici et ils ont mis environ 2 heures pour revenir jusqu'ici.
There were American tanks on the beach, and the Germans were trying to destroy the American tank, and I happened to be close to one when they shelled it, and I received shell fragments from the German shell.
Et il y avait des chars américains sur la plage et les Allemands cherchaient à...
Finally, when I got to Verville, our American medic bandaged me up, and I finished out the next 2 days under bandage.
Mais finalement, quand il est arrivé à Verville,
I stayed for 2 days before I could be evacuated back to England to the hospital.
il est resté 2 jours à Verville avant de pouvoir être évacué en Angleterre pour des soins médicaux.
We did not realize then how important this D-Day was, but really it was the beginning of the end, and we were here to liberate France, a beautiful country.
Et ils n'ont pas réalisé combien le D-Day, le débarquement était important ce jour-là, mais c'était le début de la liberté pour la France, ce beau pays, et pour aussi le reste de l'Europe.
We came here now to remember our fallen comrades that are buried in the cemetery. We also came to renew our friendship with the French people. Vive la France, vive l'Amérique, merci.
The men would have to land on Omaha Beach. It was obvious because here at Omaha Beach, at low tide, we've got a 4.5 mile stretch of beach here. We're still at the furthest western point of it at the moment, but it extends for 4 miles to the east here. And the beach itself sits in between 2 cliffs. The cliffs to the west extend for 15 miles. The cliffs to the east extend for 12. So out of an area which is over 30 miles of coastline, this is the only place we could land troops. It became clear that if we were going to land a sufficient number of men to make D-Day a success, men had to land here. The Germans also realised this though. In the majority of the Normandy coastline, the German fortifications were relatively light compared to what they were in northern France. But there was an exception to this, and that was here at Omaha. We knew the Germans had built 13 complexes of fortifications. 13 complexes which could put a devastating amount of firepower onto the beach if they weren't taken care of before the beach landings took place. There was over 50 field guns, there was over 70 mortar pits, and there were 85 machine gun nests overlooking this beach.
Omaha Beach.
Now, you're also stood by one of the most deadly positions that overlooked Omaha Beach. Within this bunker today, we have the original 88mm anti-tank gun. It's placed here for a reason. It's facing east. And you can guarantee for every position we've got facing east, further along this beach, there will be a twin position facing west. Yeah. The Germans did that so they could block the fire and they could sweep the whole length of the beach.
Non mais arrêtez, il y en a plein là-bas.
Battle of the Balls. Christmas is 44.
Well, Britain's oldest man celebrated his 111th birthday today, honoured with an RAF flight mast. Henry Allingham was also one of the last survivors of the First World War still alive. Stars and more.
The Navy doesn't normally put on a ceremony like this in front of the Navy's oldest warship, HMS Victory. The band celebrated the birthday of Britain's oldest man. He was born 7 years before the first aircraft flew. He joined the fledgling Royal Naval Air Service. A Sea Fury, a Russian aircraft from a much. He took the time to thank them all. And of the bass drum. Allingham is one of 3 known survivors from the First World War. Last year he went back to Flanders Fields.
We've got a number of family members who have talked about this for years, but
Really? Do
Sure.
take whatever.
Okay.
Photos of whatever or film. But the oldest part of the church is actually the Celtic cross, the stone cross. I don't know if you can see it down the front here.
yeah, I remember reading that
Right.
that this was actually a sign that there had been a religious presence on this site for many, many years.
Yes, that's over 1,000 years old.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
Between 1,000 and 1,500 years
Oh,
old.
my.
Isn't that incredible? And that would
Good
have been
heavens.
painted brightly coloured.
Right.
And
Okay.
that would have been somewhere in this area. We don't know where it would have been painted.
Right.
It would have been put up by the monks
Uh-huh.
over at Dewsbury. That was where the minster was.
Amazing.
Building is.
The lectern is beautiful, and as is the pulpit as well.
Yes. The pews, which are, from a historic point of view, they're fascinating. From a ministry point of view, they're a nightmare.
I love it. That's wonderful.
Because they're everywhere.
Sure.
But they're pre-Reformation. So again, they're 16th, 17th century. In fact, this
Right.
this one. Yeah, this one. This one has an inscription, and it says 1584.
Oh,
It's
my.
engraved there.
Good heavens.
These are the posh
1584.
ones.
Good heavens.
These are the comfortable ones.
Right.
Okay,
I
so
understand.
If you have to just go and have a sit in
Let's
one of
try
the
it.
others.
Let's try it.
That's all that remains of the medieval glass. That is medieval, going back hundreds
Oh,
of
my.
years. The rest of the stained glass is more recent. But
Right.
that is really ancient.
Yeah, we noticed in a lot of different. We've been to the Salisbury Cathedral, to St.
Right.
Paul's.
Yes.
I'm dragging Chris through a lot of different religious
Yeah.
buildings, but
These are
it's
20. They were. They're probably our most valuable. They're done. I can't remember who did them, but
they're really
the artists.
outstanding.
Yeah, because of the use of the colours, very unusual.
Right.
So they're quite famous.
Outstanding. Yes.
Yeah, by them.
The church that, it looks like you have a number of things that have been collected over the years. Tell me about the Bible. 1785.
Yeah, 1785.
Wow.
Just, I think, just put it. We'd had a few of those given to us.
By families, I guess, in the
think,
church,
yes,
different
they
people.
are so we our most ancient item is a silver chalice, but it's actually it's a 1614 chalice.
Yeah, 1614.
Yeah.
Oh my.
But it's so valuable we haven't kept it here. We've
Right.
given it to York Minster.
I can understand that. That's a beautiful window over there as well.
Yes.
That is really
Yeah,
well
lovely.
done. Just gorgeous. Yeah. It's absolutely beautiful and different than any I've seen. I've not
Yeah.
seen that particular pattern or that
No,
that kind of design before. That's beautiful. And the window at the back is certainly lovely as well.
Yeah. And then at one stage during restoration work, about 200 years ago, they decided to have a new one, so they threw this out. And it sat,
Oh my!
I think it sat in the vicarage garden. Would
Wow.
you believe? I'm not sure if it was a bird bath or just there.
Oh, for heaven's sakes.
And it was reintroduced.
Very different from the baptismal fonts that I have used.
Yes.
Much more modern, but this is. I wonder how old do you think this is?
I think this is 13th century.
Oh, for heaven's sakes!
Yeah. And you can see that these holes are where they fastened down,
Right.
because the water was kept in here, and but because of the superstition in the Middle Ages, people felt if they drank the water it would heal them and stuff like that, so they actually had to bolt it down to stop
Right.
everyone drinking the water.
Oh my! Oh, very much like the water at the Sheep's Gate.
Yes, that's right.
And tell me about this. This is just
this was a gift.
a family gave this.
Yeah, this was one of the previous vicars who became archdeacon. It's when did he say?
beautiful.
Time to have a look. Yeah, Richard Phipps, 1901, I think he served till 1913, and he became archdeacon.
I see.
So, and it was a gift to the church from them.
Right. beautiful.
It's more high church. It's probably not quite in keeping with the screen.
Right. So they did have the wooden screen there.
There was, yes. I think that was taken down about during Richard Collins' time. When he did a lot of the work to restore it.
Yeah.
And removed the Reformation pulpit. And
right.
This one here.
Do you like the pulpit?
Lovingly careful with it. But,
well, I wonder how long it's been here.
yeah, I'm not sure its length of time.
It's probably been here longer than we are, so it can be temperamental
yes,
if it wants to.
True.
Yeah, I understand.
But, yes,
it's beautiful.
There are
Just beautiful.
stops that they don't use because that causes problems. And if it's damp, sometimes the odd note sticks.
Right.
Toward 20th century, when they rediscovered the stone for the cross, but it was rebuilt in the same way, and obviously they left within there. That's a medieval hermit's squint.
Oh my!
Yeah, so there was a hermit's shack attached to that, and that's where the hermit could stay and pray and see.
Oh, for goodness sakes!
See the priest.
Amazing!
Yeah.
That's really amazing. Wow.
So,
tell me about the altar. That's gorgeous. It's beautifully done. Is it? Do you know how old that is?
Yeah, it's pretty old. You can. I don't know how old it is actually. But you can see when you get close. You can see it's beginning to struggle a little bit. But,
very well done, though.
Again, that's the problem of damp in a building like this is really quite difficult to be in the winter months. Very unusual to have one of these. I think it's called ambulary. But it's just got the hangings behind it and things like that.
Yeah.
You can. It is. So
Is this in memory of the father?
Yes, I think it is.
Okay. Richard Collins and then Richard Collins.
Yes. At that stage, they had stalls. They had they're not called stalls. What are they called? Upstairs. Anyway.
Yeah. It's almost like a balcony type thing. Yeah.
That's why I couldn't remember what it was called for a moment. So this is going back. I'm not quite sure, but I think it was probably just before the First World War.
Wow. That's amazing.
So. And then up here side.
It really stands the same.
Yeah.
But there's a great appreciation for history here, and I admire you folks for that. And tell me again, probably the pew framing is how old?
Yeah, that's probably 12th century.
12th century.
Yeah, they've done some wood testing on it.
I see.
That's about 12, and so we.
Yeah, I guess they can do the carbon dating and the.
They think they were the original rafters in the church.
That's looking up toward All Hallows Church. Kirkburton. Liverpool. It's the Mersey River. No river traffic today. Mr. Ribble contemplating at the Albert Dock in Liverpool. Paul McCartney appeared last night in a concert in London. It was free, and I wasn't there. That's weak.
That was how Bob Wooler, the original Cabin Club DJ, welcomed fans. But there wasn't always beat music at the Cabin. A one-time venue for jazz bands, the club was a dark basement cellar, which opened in 1957 in Matthew Street, part of Liverpool's commercial district. With the coming of Mersey Beach,
Good boy.
Performances at the Empire. George Harrison has appeared there with 2 bands. We also had a big tribute to George on his birthday back in 2002 in cinema. It was such a great success that they then decided to premiere all Beatles films. It was number 9 yesterday. Yesterday. That's it, number 12. George was actually born in the downstairs front room. That's it, just grab your photos. Back round to the bus and I'll talk about the house as we're moving then. Midwife delivered George, yeah? It was probably a lot more common than they to be born at home. Get both George out here, born at home. For the evening performance, Ivan decides to take Paul in to meet the band. First thing Paul McCartney said to John Lennon was, "I noticed when you were playing the guitar you'd only use 4 strings." John said, "Yes, because Mum's been teaching me my banjo, and now to use 4 strings." Good afternoon, dear. If you still remember that after 20 years, you must have been famous. John's bedroom was the little one above the front door. Along the band came round to rehearse. They weren't allowed in the house, the guitars. They were only allowed inside the porch. That's because Mimi always said to John, "The guitar's all very well and good, John, but you'll never make a living out of it." In 1965, John came back to visit Mimi. After fighting his way through the crowd of people gathered outside, he found Mimi sitting in the kitchen crying. When he asked her what the problem was, she said, "I can't put up with these crowds anymore. I want my peace and tranquility back." John said, "Don't worry, I'll take you on holiday." And he took her to a place called Poole in Dorset. As they got to the cottage where they were staying, John showed Mimi inside, told her to have a look round while he brought luggage in at the house. And a young lad who lives at the far end of Fortland Road, only about 10 years old, was out playing football in the street. He walked up to the car, tapped on the window and said, "Hey mate, give us £1, I'll show you where Paul McCartney used to live." Paul thought it was hilarious, got on the phone to Peter Grant at the local paper. He sent a photographer down. Next day it was front page, photograph of the boy, the lad who charged Paul McCartney £1 to show Paul McCartney where Paul McCartney used to live. And Paul was amazed that even children were trying to make money out of the Beatles. So we're going to jump off here, take a little walk down Fortland Road to Paul's last home in Liverpool.
You'll have to stop bringing your kids with you, mate.
I know. And Paul was 5'10", John was a little bit taller, just under 5'11". I'm just on 6'2". But John was, as Julia describes John was a fat person stuck in a little body. You know, because she loves him when he had the early Beatles. He was quite chubby, then he lost a lot of weight, especially when he in the white suit. He hates that because he was so thin and gaunt. But he was always quite heavy, John. He battles with his weight all his life. But people are often surprised when they first meet Paul McCartney because people think he's because he's so iconic. It's you build him up that much, and when you meet him, he's literally 5'10". They're all quite short.
John and Paul are similar height.
Yeah, well, Ringo and George were shorter. Yeah. George especially always looked taller because he was so thin. Especially when his hair got longer, he always looked very gaunt. So you always thought of him as being taller, yeah, longer.
So they're only 5'10".
Yeah.
Ringo's only 5'4".
Yeah, Ringo was slightly shorter again. Again, I'll tell you more about the house back on the bus. This house is actually a museum, so you can come and view the inside of the house. Owned by the National Trust, they operate a separate tour which costs £12, takes 2 hours. You're actually on the inside of this house and also the inside of John's. Both are made to look exactly like they did when the lads lived there. In my opinion, this is the better of the two. John's just sends a look at his upbringing with Mimi and George and the students who lodged with them. This one goes more into the Beatles. The front room here is where the Quarrymen used to rehearse, and then the Beatles used to rehearse. In there, loads made it look like it did in the late 50s. There is a lot of photographs on display of the lads actually rehearsing and writing songs in this house. This one also comes with an audio tour, which has interviews from Paul and Mike talking about what it was like to live here at that time. And Paul lived in this house right up until 1964. So he was already world famous, 22 years old, and still living in this little house with his dad. And he was in the Scouts as well. So he's not telling us. Paul's bedroom is the little one above the front door. Mike, his younger brother, had the big bedroom at the back of the house because he had all this photography equipment set up in the bedroom. That's it, I'll tell you more about it. Back of the bus. There's 4 tours a day, Wednesday to Sunday. The 2 in the morning leave from the city centre, the 2 in the afternoon leave from Speke Hall, which is out by John Lennon International Airport. And you get the tickets from the 08 place, Tourist Information Centre in town.
So no one lives in there anymore?
Yep. There's a guy who gets paid to live there.
Oh.
It's actually his job to live in the house.
And keeping all horses. This
is why I always say he could be in. Because when he looks around the door like that, everyone always goes, oh, God.
Yeah.
This is John has the worst job in the world. John gets paid to live in Paul McCartney's house. It's a tough job.
Someone's got to do it.
And people often say he looks a bit like McCartney. He doesn't. No, it's untrue. McCartney looks like John. McCartney lived here for 9 years. John has now been here 9 years and 8 days.
Yeah, lived here longer than Paul.
So we now refer to it as John's house. Also a barber shop on the far side, formerly Violetti's. Just on your left here, St Barnabas Church. That's where Paul actually was a choir boy. And the reason I wrote about this area, basically, it's where they used to get the bus into school every morning. As they were now coming on to Penny Lane, you've got the Penny Lane wine bar just to your left with the lyrics of the song written out above the doorway. Basically, so when you come out on a Friday and Saturday night after a few pints, you get the words right. But even though the places in the song were not actually on Penny Lane, the whole area was known as the Penny Lane District. As the lads used to meet there virtually every day to get the bus to school. When John was at the Art College and Paul and George at the Institute, they'd always wait for the bus, but they'd always wait for one particular bus. George's father was a bus driver, so then they're going to be an hour late for school, they'd always wait for his bus, just they didn't have to pay. Now coming up on your left hand side, you see the white building ahead of us, Dovedale Towers. Formerly St Barnabas Church Hall, where the Quarrymen performed in many a skiffle competition and actually won quite a few. But also during the 1960s, Freddie Mercury of Queen used to live above there while studying at Liverpool Art College. You actually get a better view of the building as we go past and you look back on yourselves. Now you remember back to 1995, a new song and video was released called Free as a Bird. The video to Free as a Bird was shot along Penny Lane, so this is your left and right was in that video, including this bus. So you actually sat on the bus that was in the video to Free as a Bird. And just as you come over this bridge, you look to your left hand side, you'll see the grounds of Liverpool College, and that was the school attended by Brian Epstein. That's
exactly the same pictures on Facebook. I know.
He lived there for about 4 years with his mother and father, Richard and Elsie, until they then separated, and Ringo and his mother went to live with his grandparents, not very far away, just down the street at number 59. But about a year later, Elsie met a new man in her life, a man called Harry Graves from Brighton, and once the relationship was well underway, they decided to get themselves their own house. But liking this area so much, again, they didn't move very far. Just this little signage on your right. Number 10, Admiral Grove, halfway down on the right, the White House. On a Friday and Saturday evening, Harry and Elsie would come to this little pub on the corner, the Empress. Harry would play the piano, Elsie would sing. Her favourite song was a Doris Day wartime song called Sentimental Journey. So Ringo released his first solo album. He called the album Sentimental Journey as a tribute to his mother, and the Empress pub is featured on the front cover of that album. So they didn't have a drummer with them. Mona Best, who owned the Casbah, said to John, "Where's the drummer?" John said, "Oh, he was ill, couldn't make it." The truth of the matter was, John had actually forgotten to ask a drummer to go and play that day. So Mona said to him, "Listen, the kids in here want rock and roll music. You can't play rock and roll without a drummer. Why don't you ask my son to stand in for you? He's in a band called the Blackjacks." So they asked Pete Best to join them that day, and the lads liked him. So he stayed with them right up until August 1962, until Brian Epstein, then our manager, and George Martin, then our producer, finally realised that he wasn't very good, so they sacked him. Instantly the band wanted Ringo to replace him, and it wasn't because he was the best drummer in the world, because according to John Lennon, he wasn't even the best drummer in the Beatles. There's one reason they wanted Ringo in that band. Now you probably won't believe this, but it's true. The reason they wanted Ringo in the band is because they'd seen him in Hamburg, and they'd seen how good he was with the girls. They go, "We get him in our band, we'll get more girls."
Well, there you go.
Totally true. In fact, it's the same reason I had Lee on the bus with me. Not wearing suits. They were always photographed wearing matching suits. Apart from that photograph on the balcony, 2 of them were wearing the grey suits with no collars, and 2 of them were wearing black suits. The reason behind it is they'd all just been to the world premiere of A Hard Day's Night at the Odeon Cinema, and they were all wearing the grey suits. They were supposed to come back to the town hall, get changed into the black suits before appearing in front of the public. 2 of them came back and got changed, 2 of them came back and went straight to the bar. So by the time it was actually time to go out and do the photos, 2 of them still had the grey suits on. As I've searched everywhere, all the books, all over the internet, it's the only photograph I can find of them not wearing matching suits at a public appearance.
Whoa. Way down here. Oh my. Well.
20 minutes.
Got to hide your love away.
All together.
Hey, you got to hide your love away.
Hey, you got to hide your love away.
Eleanor Rigby died and was buried along with her name. Nobody came. Ha ha! Try. It's our London flat. Kitchen. I think I've already done this, but I just wanted to be sure. Kitchen. Are you decent? It's Mr. Ripple's bedroom. It's where the master sleeps. He's got his own television. I have 2 bicycles. He has a television. Here we have the dryer that you have to empty water out of. There's Mr. Ripple and his flat. Here's all the clothes he brought. Here's where he takes a dump. Said he got a 5-pounder out of the way the other day. Shower. We don't use this one though. Do you use this one?
Yeah.
Huh?
I have, yeah.
I use that other one.
I'm using both.
I'm taking a tour. All right, then. Here's my shower. It's difficult for a fat boy. Gotta get your whole body in there and then turn around to wash.
Step up and down.
Pretty rough. Mirror. Sink. Cool.